Thank you. I'll give the platform party a chance to go down and sit in the audience for the distinguished lecture presentation. Michael Caddick, we may need you up here, I'm not sure about the computer. You can go on. Maybe we're okay. Maybe we're okay. So I feel like I've already cut into our distinguished lecturer's time, or we have cut into this person's time, and so I'm going to make this very brief. Our distinguished lecturer is a Caucasian male, and people who know me well probably know who the speaker is. But this person played on an NCAA championship team, which not a lot of us can say. And I'll just I could talk about accomplishments, et cetera, and I can say he, because I already told you it was a male, right? But accomplishments in publishing and presenting and awards and grants and that sort of thing, and they are many and varied. But the reason I invited this person to be the distinguished lecturer is twofold. One of them is, I think he does maybe a better job than anyone I know at maintaining the agriculture in agricultural education. And he's the only member of our profession that I know who is in charge of a branch experiment station, for example. And with all due respect to Kirby Barrett, Don Johnson, Bob Warnbrode, L.H. Newcomb, Jasper Lee, Glennie Bowen, Glenn Sheehan, and a lot of other people who taught me during my career, this is the person who I learned the most about teaching from by co-teaching a teaching methods class at Mississippi State University about 20-something years ago. So I'll introduce Matt Raven as our distinguished lecturer. It's going to take him just a minute to set up, and so while that's happening,
sorry, Mike, I don't trust your computer.
So while Matt's getting set up, just let me say, where's Lori Moore? So yesterday, when I was doing introductions of grad students and new faculty, I asked Lori if there's anything special she would like me to do as part of that time, and she said interpretive dance, which was quick thinking on her part, and really out of my realm, out of my bailiwick. But maybe tonight at the bar, we'll try. How about that?
All right.
Is this working?
This working? Yeah. This mic work?
Yes. You make it too tall for me. If you need that.
I'm a cat guy. Rescue cats. Okay, made up here without tripping. Computer's not on the ground yet. So it's a distinct honor to speak to you today about a topic I consider one of the most important agricultural movements occurring and its implications for our profession, regenerative agriculture. I was asked to speak on this topic last year in Michigan, but I was only given 5 minutes and 5 slides. Unfortunately for you, Michael did not give me the same constraints. So you get the full enchilada. The slide deck's only 75 slides, but there are a lot of pictures. However, in doing so, I'm reminded of 3 types of fun a California rancher described for me last March when I was in California. According to him, there's type 1 fun, fun at the time, fun to remember. There's type 2 fun, not fun at the time, but still fun to remember. And type 3 fun, not fun at the time, We're never ever talking about it again. And he probably used a little bit more colorful language than that, but I think you get the drift. So my plan today is to make sure this talk is type 1 and not type 3. My path to becoming an agricultural educator was an accidental one. I went to UC Davis with every intention of becoming a diversified livestock rancher in California. Even that path was not a typical one, as my father was an antitrust attorney in San Francisco, and I grew up in the Bay Area. However, several events steered me toward agriculture. My 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Max, influenced me when I was in class. We raised chickens. And before I knew it, I'd flocked my own chickens at my house in the Bay Area, way before the trendy addition to the Bay Area backyard. My dad was surprised that summer when he found out that he had to take care of my chickens, which he knew nothing about when I went back to Michigan. Both my parents were from Michigan with agricultural backgrounds. I now live in the land my mother was raised on, which is 1 mile from the farm my great-great-grandfather homesteaded in 1873, and just down the road from the farm my father was raised on. I'm a lucky guy. From an early age, I spent summers in Michigan working on family farms, which influenced me to want to have a career in agriculture. I mentioned my background because I think it's really important to see where I come from, and it's also more typical of our students who are becoming agricultural educators, as more of them are following a non-traditional path, such as I did. Many of our pre-service teachers in Michigan State were not raised on a production farm or ranch. Consequently, many of them lack depth or the breadth of agricultural experiences to draw upon as agricultural teachers. Given my goal of becoming a diversified livestock rancher, I looked for every opportunity I could to get experiences that would help me toward that career. Fortunately, those experiences also were beneficial to becoming a high school teacher. I worked on my family farms in Michigan as a cowboy for New Holland and Farm, a packer guide for Rock Creek Pack Station, a tractor driver for Fortis Ranch, student shepherd at the UC Davis Sheep Unit, field manager for the UC Davis Polo Club, and a lot more. Through these jobs, I learned how to graze, shoe, weld, rope, tie knots, run a chainsaw, build fence, maintain equipment, and most importantly, I became a lifelong learner who could solve problems. Concurrently, I was doing everything I could do to prepare myself academically. My bachelor's was in plant and soil science with emphasis in agronomy and range science. However, I took as many animal science courses as I could take. I judged livestock, I judged dairy cattle, and also I took additional other courses such as field operations, hydraulics, and ag management. This was during the era where the message from the Secretary of Ag was, get big or get out. When I graduated, that was the lens I was looking through. In my mind, there was no way I could become a rancher economically. It just didn't make sense. The mindset was the result from working on big ranches, graduating from one of the best colleges of agriculture in the world, and the agricultural policies of the land. So I became an ag teacher. When I taught high school ag in the Central Valley of California, I concentrated on the intersection of agriculture and education, using everything I learned at UC Davis about the best agricultural practices of the time and how to teach high school agriculture. Over the years, as my hair has gotten grayer, I still have it, my worldview of ag educator has evolved based on life experiences. When I first started teaching, I was a certified pest control advisor in the Central Valley. I remember a farm where I worked where we were using ethylene dibromide as a soil fumigant for nematodes on tomatoes. And the applicator was in a full hazmat suit, as this soil fumigant was a Category 1 marked danger. I had one of those aha moments where I realized that something that was so dangerous we had to wear full hazmat suits we were putting in the ground where we were growing food. Not surprisingly, that chemical is no longer labeled for agriculture because it was found in groundwater and it's labeled a cancer-causing agent. Jump forward to when I was at Mississippi State in 2005. Even though we're 5 hours inland, 5 hours inland when Katrina hit, it was still a Category 1 hurricane. Parts of Mississippi became a global South country overnight. In Starkville, grocery stores were stripped bare, gas stations ran out of gas, and large sectors of the county were without power for weeks. I remember Michael Newman rocked my generator for at least 2 or 3 weeks, right, Michael? It was through these and other life experiences I realized our food system is becoming increasingly vulnerable. Although modern technology has elevated most people's food security and material wealth, this has occurred at the expense of natural resources upon which humans ultimately depend. We now have a significantly degraded resource base in which the availability of quality soils, water resources, and other essential inputs are threatened. Additionally, industrialization and consolidation has increased food value chain interdependence with other systems such as energy, decreasing the resilience of food systems to economic, environmental, or social shocks from the local to global scale. Agriculture, therefore, must be adaptive and able to address environmental, social, cultural, and economic complexity with being alert to unintended consequences. This evolution has brought me to where I now view myself working at the intersection of agriculture and food systems, the environment, and communities with a focus on both formal and non-formal educational systems with an eye toward food security. Consequently, if I were to go back and teach high school ag, it would look a great deal different than it was when I did in the late 1980s. I believe the hardest thing to do in the world is to grow or raise food while at the same time regenerating ecosystem processes. Sustaining our natural resources does not go far enough. We need to regenerate our soils and the overarching ecosystem processes that determine the health of our land. One of the best in-services I ever attended was when AAAE met in Lincoln, Nebraska, or maybe Omaha. And I learned about strength finders. A number one strength, as was the case for many of those in attendance that day, was learning. Fortunately, or luckily, I picked a profession that aligned with my strength. The older I get, the less I know, the more I want to learn. I've been lucky and fortunate to be in a profession where I'm able to be in the company of brilliant people. Seneca captures this philosophy well in the following quote: "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those who you are capable of improving. The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach." I know there's some Stoic followers in the audience. One of the life hacks I've learned is when I have a conversation with one of these smart, brilliant people that I've interacted with over the years, is to ask them what are the most important books in their library. The first ones they would save in a fire. Here's the list of books that I've stolen over my career that have fundamentally changed the way I view agriculture and food systems. With a show of hands, how many of you have read 2 or more of these titles? Okay, about 3 or 4 of you. Okay? What's revealing about this is that the knowledge on these books is not new. In fact, one of these books was written nearly a century ago. Only 2 of them were written in the 21st century. I have Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolutions in the top because I read it as an undergraduate. It helped me learn to question scientific norms. And anyone that's been around me for a long time, you know I question stuff all the time. The Kuhn cycle depicts 5 phases with a 6th pre-science outside the cycle. If you feel you're solving your most difficult problems, then you're in normal science. However, if you're becoming less able to do so, then you're in model drift. Model crisis is the phase you want to avoid because you're failing most of the time. When in this phase, you need to move quickly in order to get back to normal science. However, if you're a researcher, though, this is difficult to do so because you need to redesign your core assumptions and change your habits and values, which is threatening to you and your organization. The way forward is massive change. And this is the model revolution phase of the cycle. This is your chance to step outside the box and seek out different candidates for a new paradigm. Don't worry if these candidates are in direct opposition to your core assumptions and values, as this is what needs to change. When you are in the new paradigm, it is obvious, although not everyone else will be there, as some will feel threatened. I spent some time in this book because it provides an outline for the rest of my talk. Okay, so go ahead and just in your mind, take these items and place them in 2 categories. This is an exercise we do with our students at Michigan State. You guys can't participate. Anyone have any, does anyone have a couple categories they want to volunteer? I could pick them undergrads and see if they remember. Was that Eric?
Take your class.
The environment and technology.
Complicated versus complex. Okay, they fall into complicated versus complex systems. Everything humans make, which always involves some form of technology, lies in the term, and keep on wanting to get it on the system, lies in the realm of hard systems. The thing we make do what they're designed to do. The watch tells us time, the computer computes. They do not do anything unplanned or unexpected, and they're not self-organizing. They generally won't work if a part is missing, a battery goes flat, or fuel runs out. They're complicated rather than complex, and the problems associated with them can generally be solved given enough time and money. Alan Savory points to the ever-increasing success story of modern systems, testifying to the marvels of technology, as long as we ignore the effects on the environment. The things we manage, on the other hand, always involve people and human organizations referred to as soft systems or natural resources, natural systems. The things we manage in both soft and natural systems often produce unplanned or unexpected results, and they're self-organizing. If a person or species dies, the organization of the biological community adjusts and continues, albeit in changed form. The classic example of a complex system was a study done by Robert Payne in 1963, where in a tidal pool he eliminated a starfish that was a keystone species. Within a year, the number of species in that pool had been cut in half, a self-organizing system with unintended consequences. These systems are complex, and the problems associated with them are called wicked problems because they're almost impossible to solve. It is this complexity that has made soft and natural systems so difficult to manage, leading so often to disappointing results and unintended consequences. The global food system is a prime example of a complex system combining both social and natural systems. Here's a short list of wicked problems that have direct implications for food and agricultural systems, with global climate change at the head of the list. And we're going to work our way down here to soil erosion. Beatty's description of wicked problems includes the characteristics of a multitude of interdependencies and causations. For example, climate change, there is no one cause. Furthermore, there's almost always unintended consequences to solutions. Look no further than the Asian carp knocking at the door of the Great Lakes or kudzu in the South. Wicked problems are hard to define as they're constantly evolving and are socially complex. It's hard to define climate change when the President of the United States says it's a hoax. Since they're multicausal, they're rarely the responsibility of one organization, and importantly, they evolve changing people's behaviors. That's a key right there. Beatty also argued that linear science, or normal science, is not well positioned for solving wicked problems due to their characteristics, especially the conflict over values regarding the outcomes. Since they're not the responsibility of one organization, they do not fit into one discipline regularly. And consequently, many disciplines must be involved and stakeholders must be brought into the equation due to conflict over values. Going back to Kuhn's cycle, I would suggest that we're in model drift in regard to agriculture and its implications toward climate change. Climate change is the most significant problem facing humanity. I own it, I say it, and it's the fact. Greenhouse gases continue to accumulate in our atmosphere. The major contributor to this increase is the burning of fossil fuels during the past 150 years. However, the loss of soil carbon is also a significant contributor to the steady increase of atmospheric CO2. When I first taught Introduction to Sustainability in 2012, there was 391 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, with models predicting an increase of 2 parts per million per year. That is within the context that 350 parts per million is the threshold where systems start to tip. An example of a positive feedback loop is the thawing of permafrost in the Arctic. As permafrost thaws, methane is released. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas with a global warming potential of 21, meaning that it's 21 times the warming potential of carbon dioxide. Hence, the system begins to tip with a continued increase in temperature, resulting in more permafrost being thawed further north, releasing more methane. When I created this slide deck, it was 414 parts per million. I looked again on Sunday, it was 415 parts per million, up nearly 1 part per million in last month. It's the highest it's ever been in humanity. It has risen 50% since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and it's the highest it's been in 3 million plus years. To deny climate change is to deny science. Concurrently, climate change adversely impacts food security across all 4 dimensions: food availability, accessibility, utilization, and system stability. Agriculture and food systems are not only impacted by climate change, but they also contribute to it. Current management practices of agricultural soils account for over 50% of agricultural emissions in the United States. Soil erosion continues to be one of the unintended consequences of how we manage our agricultural lands as a complicated system rather than a complex system. The 1930s saw the Great Dust Bowl, the havoc erect on the agricultural systems in the Midwest. Soil conservation became a national focus. Franklin Roosevelt famously said, "A nation that destroys its soils destroys itself." However, soil loss continues to be a wicked problem globally. It impacts all landforms and is interconnected to the greatest environmental problems we face. Diamond's book, Collapse, looks at the fall of numerous civilizations throughout history, and the common thread is the depletion of their natural resources. Half the world's land is dedicated to agriculture, with 1/3 of the land in cropland and 2/3 in grazing lands. Of those lands, there's over 75 billion tons of soil being eroded every year. That's approximately 10 tons for every person on the planet. If you assume the average American eats 2,000 pounds of food per year, that works out to 10 pounds of soil loss for every pound of food you eat. I would argue that when it comes to soil, conventional agricultural systems are the model crisis part of the cycle. Soil health is a term being more widely used. When I was a plant and soil science major, I took more than a few soil science courses. All the courses, when I took them at that time, concentrated on the chemical aspect of soil. I've learned more about soils in the past few years from my work in regenerative agriculture than all those courses. Here's an example of a poor soil health and what happens with continuous stock grazing and resulting overgrazing and non-functioning ecosystem processes, specifically the mineral cycle, water cycle, energy cycle, and community dynamics. This picture was taken while headed south on a November 2017 morning in the Mara National Reserve of Kenya. This is 2 hours later on the way back. This is the result of a 2.5 centimeter rain event. Nature abhors bare soil. Nowhere in nature will you find bare soil, except in true deserts. But mankind is doing their best to make more of true deserts. This gully was dry when we drove through on the way south to Talek. On the way north, this is the result of that same rain event. No water going into the soil, precious topsoil going down the river, and continued degradation of the land. Livestock is the other significant contributor to agricultural emissions. Overgrazing as well as enteric methane are both factors. There have been a number of high-profile reports like the Eat Lancet Commission that focuses on the adverse environmental impacts of ruminants. See, this is where I do all the bad news. Then I start talking about the good news. However, rather than being a source and a cause of the problem, agricultural ecosystems can be a sink of atmospheric CO2 and reduce greenhouse gases through the adoption of regenerative food and their systems. I first heard about Alan Savory holistic management from my cousins that run our family homestead, 5th generation on the homestead. They've been practicing holistic management since the late 1980s. I've been fortunate not only to have read a seminal book on holistic management, but to have had numerous conversations with Alan on ranches and farms both in Africa and the United States. He contends, and I agree wholeheartedly, the only wealth that can sustain any community, economy, or nation is derived from the photosynthetic process, green plants growing on regenerating soil. Holistic management is an overarching framework that provides land managers the tools needed to manage complex systems while taking into account environmental, social, and financial factors, both in the short term as well as the long term. Alan founded the Savory Institute that oversees the Savory Network, consisting of 41 hubs globally, with a short-term goal of reaching 100 hubs by 2025. The Savory Network is a global community working to advance regenerative agriculture. There are currently 8.3 million hectares under holistic management and over 5,200 holistically trained land managers, and I've trained some of them. In 2015, Michigan State University was the first university to become a Savory hub. As Michael mentioned, I'm fortunate to be a faculty coordinator for one of the experiment stations in Michigan, and my colleague, animal science professor, manages another one. And so those two experiment stations, each of 1,000 acres, comprise the hub. Alan developed holistic management out of necessity. Going back to Kuhn's cycle, he was in model crisis. He was a consultant in Rhodesia, and ranchers were suffering financial losses due to non-functioning ecosystem processes. He had 4 insights that led to the holistic management framework and the classification of tools that can be used to manage land. These tools are neither considered positive nor negative. They're tools. It's how they're used when managing land that determines if there's negative or positive effects. Animal impact is one of the tools used extensively by holistic managers in the form of holistic planned grazing to regenerate land. Crawls are used for several reasons in Africa. The main reason is to concentrate animal impact on the land that needs it the most. In Zimbabwe, they also use it for protection against lions. Works pretty well. The herders push the cattle, goats, and sheep into the enclosure with exceedingly high stocking rates overnight. The crawls moved every couple of days to provide more impact in the form of urine, dung, and trampling to the next section of land that needs it. This mimics the vast herds of large ruminants that co-evolved with the grasslands of North America, Africa, and Asia. Colonel Dodge in Missouri in 1871 estimated a herd of bison that was 25 miles across and 50 miles long. Think about that. 25 miles across, 50 miles long, 12 million head. The picture on the right would be our best guess what the landscape might look like after that herd passed through. However, the bison would not come back again for at least a year, allowing a long recovery period. This is how the grasslands of the world evolved, alongside vast herds of large ruminants. Here's the result of animal impact from using a crawl by the Zizindi tribe in Zimbabwe. The picture on the right is where the crawl is currently being used. The picture on the left is where the crawl was previously. You can see the flush of green growth after a rain. The Zizindi tribe has been practicing holistic planned grazing for approximately 4 years when I took this picture. The main river that used to stop running during the dry season now runs year-round. Here's a photo of a paddock at the African Center for Holistic Management at the beginning of the dry season where holistic planned grazing is practiced. Alan runs about 1,000 head on 3,500 hectares. This picture was taken the following day, 20 kilometers away, at the Zambezi National Park, where no livestock grazing is allowed, is banned. The land is overgrazed by wildlife, and the ecosystem processes are non-functioning due to the adverse impact of overgrazing and lack of management. This quote from Leopold, a San County Almanac, captures White Oak Pasture's farming philosophy. Land, then, is not merely soil. It is a fountain of energy flowing through a circuit of soils, plants, and animals. White Oak Pastures is in Bluffton, Georgia. The Harris family has farmed it since the end of the Civil War. White Oak Pastures is also a Savory hub, and I'm fortunate to consider Will Harris a colleague and a friend. Will graduated from the University of Georgia with an animal science degree and followed all the best practices that he had learned in Athens. However, 25 years ago, he went through a model crisis and underwent a paradigm shift, and he started a farm using regenerative practices. This is the model that he drew for me at dinner last March to demonstrate the space that White Oak Pastures works in, the intersection of animal welfare, land stewardship, and community. Every day, they butcher meat from animals raised in a regenerative manner using humane animal management practices. The following slides are a good example of how he does all three. White Oak Pastures is the largest supplier of animal protein to Whole Foods in the Southeast. They raise and slaughter 10 species of livestock and are the largest free-range poultry producer in the U.S. with over 100,000 head on the ground at any given day. Lots of bald eagles, too. Real keeps on pushing for a closed-loop system with zero waste. Anything not used in the slaughterhouse is composted, and the resulting compost put back in the land. They also believe in value added, and Will is always searching to improve the stewardship of the land, the family's farm, and the community. Will continues to acquire land that's contiguous to his current holdings. This is a peanut field he acquired in 2016. The field had less than 1% organic matter and such a heavy herbicide residue it was hard to establish an annual ryegrass cover crop. The next step would be free-range chickens on the land. Each of these slides is a successive field and a successive phase of regeneration. In addition to chickens, you'll also use hogs, especially on the field edges bordering the woods. Let me get a glass of water. I usually don't talk this much. The edge is where species of diversity exists and what has largely disappeared from agricultural lands in the United States. I remember when I was young hunting pheasants along the edge of fields in California. However, by the time I was in high school, those edges were gone, so were the pheasants. Will's ultimate holistic context is to establish a savanna consisting of open woodlands and perennial grasslands in southwest Georgia. Then he brings in his cow herd, as well as more compost and other organic matter. The orange is peanut hulls. After 7 years, the land regenerated to highly productive grassland pastures that he uses to finish his cattle on for market in the southeast. Through these regenerative practices, he has regenerated the ecosystem processes, resulting in healthy soils with active soil biology and high forage productivity. He's taken these soils from less than 1% organic matter to over 5% organic matter in 7 years. The Brown Ranch in Bismarck, North Dakota is another example of a holistically managed regenerative farm that has an integrated cropping livestock system. Dave Brown has increased their soil organic matter to 9% over the past 25 years by focusing on improving soil health on their 5,000 acres. This would be a typical rotation at the Brown Ranch. Winter triticale, followed by a warm season cocktail cover crop of 12 or more species. Then they graze it, and they also put chickens on it anywhere between October and January. They practice zero tilling, and they never, ever leave the ground bare. Will Harris never, ever leaves the ground bare. They eliminate synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and they do not use GMOs. When you have functioning ecosystem processes, you increase the resilience of the land. Here's an example of that resilience. I took this picture on August 20th, 2013. It was 104 degrees that day. That cocktail cover crop had been planted on June 26, 2013. So from June 12th to August 20th, they had 3,800 inches of rain. And they grew that cover crop on that. That's 123,000 gallons per acre per foot. 8% soil organic matter. Each 1% increase in soil organic matter will hold 16,500 gallons per acre per foot. So that 8% organic matter was able to capture every single bit of that rain and make it available for plant use. When I drove here the other day, all I saw was water going down through gullies into the river, into the ditches, on bare soil. Brown ranches increases their economic diversity by stacking the enterprises with no inputs. The Brown Ranch consistently beats the county averages for both corn and soybeans. No inputs that beat the averages. They do not concentrate on maximizing yield per unit land. Rather, they concentrate on maximizing profit per unit land. Novel. Regenerative agriculturists like Will Harris and Gabe Brown have had a paradigm shift. They're focused on food and fiber systems that regenerate water, mineral, energy cycles, and diversity, while at the same time being economically and socially sustainable. It is important to note that both Will and Gabe are doing this at scale. These are highly productive, profitable farming systems that have not only regenerated their land, but their communities. There are an increasing number of producers across the globe that are undergoing this change in their paradigms. I've been on scores of farms and ranches across the United States, as well as Cuba, South Africa, Malawi, Kenya, and Zimbabwe that are practicing regenerative agriculture. What we're working on in Michigan State is to normalize regenerative agriculture through interdisciplinary research with intentions to become transdisciplinary and close Kuhn's cycle. Implications for research for us. As stated earlier, linear science is not well suited for addressing wicked problems due to the need for interdisciplinary approaches, as well as taking into consideration the social component of them. Who in here does social research? Almost any RFP from USDA or NSF emphasizes the need for interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary research. AFNRE researchers are uniquely positioned to be integral members of these teams. In order to do so, we must continue to broaden our toolboxes for research. Dr. Barrett, don't get mad at me. But when I was in my doctoral program in the late 1980s, I was single-minded in becoming a quantitative researcher. I sought out every course I could take on quantitative methods, and my vision of the perfect study was one that employed a true experimental design. I now realize that reductionist methodologies such as that are ill-suited for studying the grand challenges facing the complex systems that we, as AFNRE researchers, intersect with. Consequently, we need to utilize a mixed methods approach as well as rely on additional methods from other disciplines. I would argue that many of the researchable areas that we focus on would benefit from a participatory research methodology where the community is not being researched, but rather a participant in the study with the goal of applying the results to help solve or mitigate the problem. Participatory research falls along a spectrum from the extreme end, where the community dictates the research questions and methods, to the other end, where the researchers help formulate the questions while designing the methods and data analysis. Subsequently, the researchers assist the community with using the results. For example, dovetailing onto Caitlin's talk from last night, we have a team in Flint, Michigan right now working on doing a resilience study on food security in Flint. You know, I think it's like an 8-person team, and that would be an example of what we can do. And we have an Ag Food Natural Resource faculty member part of that team. Other related methods include the use of modeling and network analysis. Modeling, long used by natural sciences, is now a commonly used methodology in the social sciences. Network analysis, social network analysis, is a type of modeling that has specific attributes that makes it very appropriate modeling methodology that should be employed by us. And I was very heartened to see that we have a workshop tomorrow on social network analysis, as well as mixed methods for our program development. Here are 3 funding opportunities that have not traditionally been led by AFNRE researchers. However, by leveraging our broad understanding of food and agricultural systems, coupled with our social science and educational backgrounds, we can position ourselves as PIs on these types of proposals. Not co-PIs, PIs. You know, we need to be PIs on these. Okay? And the applicants got released 2 weeks ago, May 9th. Release. How many people have the RFP on their desk? I'm writing one. The one I have is running out. The first one is this an example. This project was developed by an interdisciplinary team led by me as the PI with the goal of increasing the number of farmers in Michigan's Upper Peninsula growing nutrient-dense food. Michigan's UP is a food desert, and typically lags economically behind the rest of Michigan and the U.S. as a whole. The project established an incubator for new farmers as well as conducting research and teaching on growing nutrient-dense food north of the 47th parallel. Before I started going to Africa, my colleagues would ask where my international work was, and I just say, the UP. The project took the original experiment station and recast it as a teaching and learning farm specializing in nutrient-dense food production north of the 47th parallel. I'm a faculty coordinator of the Upper Peninsula Research and Extension Center, which encompasses the North Farm. This has helped provide us the infrastructure needed to research and teach Michiganders about regenerative agriculture. Being located at the 47th parallel makes for long summer days and colder winter days. The snow came off like 2 weeks ago. However, in 2018-2019, with 165 inches of snow, we were still able to market fresh vegetables 12 months out of the year through a combination of hoop houses and root cellars with virtually no energy costs. Our interdisciplinary team has also been able to secure 3 consecutive North Central SARE grants, each with an Ag Food Next researcher as a PI or co-PI. The first one trained 17 producers on how to grass-finished beef, resulting in 600 head being placed into northern Michigan on an annual basis. The project included developing and conducting grazing workshops for producers as well as workshops for chefs and suppliers. Focus groups were conducted with all participants as part of the evaluation program. The strength of this project was the interdisciplinary approach that was taken by the PIs. The current SARE project is located in the UP, which includes Aaron McKim and myself as co-PIs. We created 7 teams across the UP consisting of a classroom teacher, their class, a producer, and extension educator to identify a problem facing the producer, and for the class to research and implement a sustainable practice to address that problem on the farm or ranch. The last example is an NSF proposal currently under consideration and also led by an Ag Food Natural Resource educator at MSU, Dr. Jenny Hodbod. This is a $1.6 million project that proposes to study the environmental and sociological dynamics of grazing in Kenya. In addition to Jenny, we have myself and scholars from geography, tourism, animal science, fisheries and wildlife, water science, and resource economics. And it's an interdisciplinary team, not a multidisciplinary team. It is the how, not the cow. A growing amount of evidence is indicating that it's how and not the cow. We have done life cycle assessments at Lake City Research Center and the White Oak Pastures on grass-fed beef. These LCAs are based on actual on-the-ground data and not on computer models like so many LCAs are in the literature. At Lake City, we have found that we have more than offset emissions from our grass-fed cattle for sequestering carbon in our pastures. Concurrently, we've increased the animal days per acre by 25%. So instead of having 500 acres of grazing land, we have now 625 acres effectively. We got 125 acres for free, just through management. At White Oak Pastures, the LCA found that the cattle were carbon neutral and the farm as a whole 85% carbon neutral. We are proving that agriculture can be a solution rather than a contributor when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. Implications for teaching. Regenerative agriculture is something that we need to think about. We must remember our roots and that AAAE traditionally approached teaching from an interdisciplinary approach. When I first started teaching, we still taught courses that were labeled Ag 1, Ag 2, Ag 3, and Ag 4. They were more focused on systems rather than on disciplines. There's also a heavy reliance on the problem-solving approach and experiential learning. Do we truly follow our roots? Do we truly do experiential learning? How many of our graduates can grow food when they leave a high school ag program? I was one of the early adopters of this. I feel that we've shifted a reductionist approach in the 1980s as a matter of survival when we placed our curriculum into disciplinary silos: animal science, plant science, ag econ, so on. I was one of the first ones to do it. I did it in order to obtain science credit so I could maintain my enrollment. However, I now argue that we need to take the best of both worlds, creating a foundation of content knowledge through STEM education, but taught in a holistic manner, with an emphasis on addressing the grand challenges facing agriculture and food systems. My best learning has always been in the field. Iowa State 450 Farm is a prime example of the type of learning when students learn by doing. My animal science colleague, Dr. Jason Roundtree, and I are working on a field school model for the preparation of holistic educators that is predicated on learning about agriculture and food systems around the ecosystem processes, with the ultimate goal of teaching a generation of regenerative agriculturalists. Yeah, it's kind of novel. We like putting students on our experiment farms. You know, they kind of pull their hair out when we say that. The last book on my list is also the most recent one, written by Charles Massey of Australia, called The Reed Warbler. Read it. Dr. Massey takes an in-depth look at the number of regenerative farms in Australia and the progress they've made in regenerating their land. Massey considers agriculture up until World War II as the organic mind, and the agriculture after it as the mechanical mind. He builds the case for a new era, the emergent mind, where regenerative agriculturalists work with nature rather than against it. Donegal Markgard, a regenerative rancher in California Bay Area, contends that we need to tend the wild, not tame the wild. I truly believe that Ag, Food, and Natural Resource Education is well positioned to provide educational programs, both formal and non-formal, to teach students how to become emergent thinkers. AFNRE researchers are also uniquely well suited to be connectors in the interdisciplinary research needed to develop and test the efficacy of these emergent food and fiber systems. Notice I've not used the term industry once through this entire presentation. I will contend that you cannot industrialize a natural soft system without unintended consequences. I know that my paradigm has changed. I drive down the road, I'm constantly reading the land. I cannot walk across a pasture without having my head down, looking at the soil. No farmer or rancher degrades their land on purpose. It is the unintended consequence of us trying to industrialize a complex system. I know that this view challenges the values and core assumptions of many of you in the audience. This is one of the outcomes of scientific revolutions. The other is a normalization of the paradigm change to normal science, and the cycle starts again. I also know it's how I finish my career, researching and teaching the best way to achieve the golden ticket, producing food and fiber, and regenerating the land in our communities. Thank you.
We're out of time. We're not going to have any questions. If you have a question for Matt, catch him somewhere. And trust me, on the IE scale, he's way over on the I. You'll have to catch him. He won't be catching you. Matt, thank you for this talk. Y'all can tell why I consider him to be one of the 2 or 3 smartest people I know. And it was my pleasure to invite him. Thank you for this. I'm going to present you with this plaque. And Bobby, right here. You got something to add? Just a minute.